What is going on, my fellow nerds? Operator Otter here, and welcome to an episode of How It Works. And today we're going to be discussing the Shockuna Lightning Spear build. This build is one of those builds where unfortunately you can't just put all the gear together and it works. There are a lot of intricate mechanics, and how you play is definitely going to make a drastic difference to how much damage you're going to be able to deal. Like a factor of 10 to 15 times more damage when you actually understand what's going on. And to prevent you from experiencing this, okay, homie is literally doing 5 times as much damage as I am. 5 times as much damage. To spare you from that existential crisis, my goal is to actually teach you these mechanics in this video so that you can go out and you can enjoy your Pit 105s or your Pit 110 clears without having to experience said sadness. But for those of you who do not want to watch the entire video, as it is a bit lengthy, here is the TLDR of the plan today. This is what we'll be going over. If you have any questions about what you see right here, go ahead and watch the entire video or go to each chapter as it's recurring there, and you can go ahead and watch that. And if you still have questions, leave them in the comments below, or go ahead and drop by my Twitch or my YouTube live and you can ask me there. As for the rest of us, let's get started. First thing we're going to discuss is the importance of cooldown reduction. Now, at first when we're building this build, the importance of cooldown reduction is to reduce the unstable currents to be able to permanently upkeep unstable currents, even though it's got a 26-second cooldown. And the way that we do that is through Aspect of the Orange Herald. The problem is that the base lucky hit chance of Lightning Spear and Ball Lightning is so egregiously low that we actually can't reset the unstable currents with them. So I'm going to prove that right here. We're just going to go here. We're going to hit these Shaming Dennies. I'm not going to do anything other than just cast my Ball Lightnings and my Lightning Spear. And as you can see, it's not enough to actually reset the cooldown of the unstable current. So what's actually resetting at? It's teleport, because teleport actually has a really high lucky hit chance. And what that means is that when you're teleporting into a group of enemies, this is the thing that's actually going to be utilized to reset the cooldown of your unstable currents. I'm going to prove that right here. So now I'm going to do the teleport. So I'm going to be teleporting around. As I'm doing that, we're going to go ahead and watch the cooldown of the unstable currents. And you can see that I'm almost reset, and I'm reset. Okay, so what we can see here is that teleport is really, really powerful in being able to reset the unstable currents. And if I add this Tal Rasha's back in, and now I have all of this cooldown reduction being in my Harlequin, in my Shaco, the evade cooldown in my elements, the evade cooldown in my boots, all of a sudden things start to get really stupid and start looking like this, where I can really instantaneously reset the cooldown of the unstable currents very quickly, and we're good to go, and I can keep this up forever. So essentially, this is what we are trying to do, is get this teleport really high cooldown. But is that really the only use for teleport? No. See, teleport can actually do another thing here with the runes. The first thing we're going to look at is the Sem Zon combo. The way that this is working is that Sem states that you're going to get 75 offering every single time you teleport, and Zon is going to make it so that you can overpower. And what happens here is that every 1.25 seconds, you're going to be able to proc this overpower that's going to last for 0.35 seconds, which means that we can get about a 20 to 30% uptime on overpowers, which is really insane if we can get the cooldown reduction low enough. If we are able to teleport 3 times a second, this is going to be very good for us to be able to consistently overpower. This is where a lot of our damage is coming from, is these overpowers in these runs, and that's one way that we are able to generate it. The other one is going to be Ahu Quacks. Now, Ahu states that when an enemy is not healthy, we are going to have a 100% chance to inflict a lucky hit, but it's 100% of the lucky hit chance, which is 84% right here. So we have an 84% chance on hitting an enemy that we are going to generate 15 offering. If you are able to hit 10 enemies, this means that you're able to generate 120 offering per teleport. You're doing 3 teleports a second, you're generating 360 offering, and then the other lucky hit is just coming from your Ball Lightning and your Lightning Spears to be able to get basically permanent uptime on Quacks, giving you a 100% damage multiplier to the entire run. And this is all dependent on teleport cooldown. We really need to be able to cast teleport 3 times per second. So that's step number 1. The second step is an attack speed breakpoint, being 155% attack speed, 12 frames, or being able to attack 5 times per second. And the way that we're going to be able to do that is that we have to run the Ice Blades that gives you attack speed per active Ice Blades, and then we're going to need a Ring of Starless Skies with just a GA attack speed. That's all we need. We don't need any crit rolls in it, but that's it. And then what we need to do is we need to run an Elixir Advantage. Now, if you do not want to run an Elixir Advantage, what you need to do is you need to actually double hit the attack speed in the Ring of Starless Skies GA. And if you do that, as you can see here, I do not have that, we are going to now go into our rotation. We need to watch for the Ice Blades being 3. So we're at 2, We're trying to wait for the third one to come out. Here's the third one, and we're going to wait for the Enlightenment to kick online. There you go, 159%. It was up there for a second. It's not on all the time, but that's the breakpoint. That's what's going to allow us to attack at 12 frames, which is 5 times per second. The next breakpoint is going to be needing to run an Elixir of Advantage with a triple hit into the attack speed, and this is going to allow us to hit the 11 frame breakpoint, or 5.5 times. So we're going to have to watch the attack speed. We're at 2 Ice Blades. We need to get up to 3. We're at 3, and then we're going to wait for Enlightenment to come online, and there you go. There's our 174% attack speed. So those are the 2 breakpoints that we need to hit. Now, why are they important? Well, obviously, being able to attack 5 or 5.5 times per second with Ball Lightning is very important, because that's what's actually going to synergize with Unstable Currents to generate a lot of Lightning Spears. Yay, we know that. But what if I told you that we can actually attack 6 times per second based on if we're able to attack fast enough with Ball Lightning and we're able to get the cooldown reduction of the Evade Teleport low enough, we can actually interweave them, because the cast flag timers on both of them are actually 2 separate buckets, and we can actually get 6 shock skills per second. Yeah, let's talk about that nonsense. So why is it important that we cast Teleport 3 times per second and cast Ball Lightning 5 times per second? And how are we going to achieve either of those at the same time within the practicality of the gameplay? Well, to do this, we actually have to understand how flag timers are working within Diablo 4. And to understand that, we need to go all the way to the basics of understanding how those flag timers work. So here what we have are 5 Ball Lightnings that are being cast in a second. This is your 12 frame breakpoint Ball Lightning, which happens at 155% attack speed. So you have a time lapse of 1 second, or 60 frames. Now, when the Ball Lightning is cast, the entire animation flag timer is the entire animation flag. It takes the entire time, which is 12 frames. But then you also have this cast flag timer, which is about 2/3 of the skill. So if it's 12 frames, it's going to be about 8 frames. And then you have an interrupt flag, which is about 4 frames, or 1/3 of the timer at the end of the skill. Now, why does this interrupt flag timer exist, and what is it doing? Because it seems like it's not doing anything here. Well, the reason this exists is so that you can react defensively to the environment without having to wait for the entire animation to finish. Imagine that you're against a boss. The boss is about to attack you, but your skill still has half a second of its animation to do. What the developers did was they put in this interrupt flag timer that only works with defensive and mobility skills that says, hey, you can actually cast this halfway through the animation flag of a skill that does damage, which will allow you to react to the damage that's being dealt to you from the environment, but still actually apply your damage to the target. So this only works with defensive and mobility skills. If it's a skill that is designed to attack, where they specifically coded it to attack, it's going to function like this, where it just goes in a row, and you can't do anything with this interrupt flag timer trying to weave them in between. Can't do that. But what if we could do something with teleport like that, right? Because what this means is that we actually have 2 buckets of these flag timers. One is for attacks and one's for defensive and mobility. And because teleport's a defensive skill, can we do some crazy little weaving here? So theoretically, what we're trying to do is that we can cast teleport at this interrupt flag timer, which is 8 frames through the Ball Lightning. Then we can cast teleport. Then teleport has this cooldown that we have, and then maybe we can line it up with Ball Lightning if it's fast enough to actually reset the next Ball Lightning into the next teleport. So what we're trying to do here is actually cast teleport right here, and then when this finishes, cast another Ball Lightning, and maybe we can actually weave in more attacks per second than just holding down Ball Lightning, because we don't need to wait for the entire animation of Ball Lightning to finish the cast teleport. So what this means is that we're going from this to something like this, where we cast our Ball Lightning at the interrupt flag timer, we cast teleport. We then cast, right when we finish teleport, we then cast another Ball Lightning. Because the cooldown reduction is low enough on the teleport, this means that when we attack and we reduce it by that 1.5 seconds, we wait about 0.2 seconds more, the cooldown comes and lines up right where the interrupt flag timer of Ball Lightning is, which means we can cast another teleport, and then we do that again. And this means that we're able to get off 6 attacks in 1 second rather than 5. Now, why is that important? Well, the reason that's important is because Unstable Current states that whenever you cast a shock skill, you're able to cast out your core, conjuration, or mastery. And if you have been playing Lightning Spear this season, you understand that your Ball Lightnings are where your generation for your Lightning Spears are coming from. The cool thing is that teleport actually counts as a shock skill, so it can cast your Lightning Spears as well. So when you're able to weave in these things, you are actually able to get out more spears than just holding down Ball Lightning, as compared to weaving in teleport and ball lightning at the same time if you can get the attack speed and the cooldown reduction low enough. Now, what happens if the cooldown reduction isn't enough? Well, what happens here is that we cast the ball lightning, we cast the teleport, we cast the ball lightning, but it's not enough to reduce the cooldown before that interrupt flag happens, which means we need to cast another ball lightning to reduce the cooldown, but then we have to wait until the interrupt flag timer of the ball lightning to then cast the next teleport. And so we're only able to get off 5 attacks right here. If the attack speed isn't large enough, then what that means is that we cast the ball lightning, we cast the teleport, the cooldown is going to be right about here, but it hasn't reached the interrupt flag timer yet. So we have to wait till the interrupt flag timer to cast teleport again. So in both cases, we're only able to attack 5 attacks per second rather than what we want, which is the 6 attacks per second. So what are the breakpoints that we need in attack speed and cooldown reduction to achieve this really cool effect by weaving in these cast flag timers? Those breakpoints are going to be the 155% attack speed, with which we've already talked about. If you're using an elixir of advantage, all you have to do is just have a GA attack speed ring of Starless Skies. You're good to go. If you don't want to use the elixir of advantage, then you're going to need to have a double hit into this attack speed. And if you want to hit the maximum, then you're going to need to use elixir of advantage with the attack speed on this. All right. And then the next thing is the cooldown reduction. So for cooldown reduction, you're going to need to hit the triple hit and the GA cooldown reduction in Tal Rasha's. You're going to need an evade cooldown reduction in your amulet. And then this one is either or. Either you get a double GA or GA double hit in the Harlequin with a double hit in the evade cooldown in the boots, or you get a triple in the Harlequin with a single in the boots. It's either or. So what I want to do is I want to show what happens when you don't have the attack speed or you don't have the cooldown reduction. So let's first show what happens when you don't have the cooldown reduction. So I'm going to take this one out because this is the lowest amount of cooldown reduction there is, and we're going to go through. We're just going to watch how fast I can teleport. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. You get the idea, right? Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to see how fast I can teleport without the Ring of Starless Skies giving me the attack speed. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a little bit faster, right? So obviously what we're seeing here is that cooldown reduction has a bigger effect. Now what happens when I'm able to hit the attack speed and the cooldown reduction? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. It's fast. It's very, very, very fast, right? That is essentially what we are trying to engage, and that's a very important thing for the build because it's going to allow you to drag pull, as shown here. It's also going to allow you to be able to stack your Summon and your Zon a lot faster. It's going to allow you to stack your Ahu and your Quacks a lot faster. It is very, very important that you are able to teleport faster, faster, faster. Teleporting as fast as possible is a very, very powerful part of the build. So I would highly suggest working on that. All right, the next thing we're going to talk about is Enlightenment plus the Enchantment Master Legendary Power Node in our Paragon plus the Familiar Enchantment that we're putting into our skill right here, and basically what that's doing to our non-physical damage. So we're going to look at the non-physical being right here, Fire, Lightning, Cold. Let's go ahead and do our thing, and let's go ahead and look at those for a second. And wait, oh, wait, what? Did you guys see that? Oh, we're at 70,000 with Cold, and then it's going to alternate and with the elements, and it'll 44,000. What? Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about what's going on here. So the first thing that we need to understand is how global multipliers are actually affecting our stat values in our actual stat value page. So let's imagine that we have 1,000% crit hit damage from our items in our Paragon, and then we have something like Aspect of Grasping Veins, which is giving us a 50% damage multiplier to our crit damage. Well, this is just going to turn our crit damage into 1,500%. And we can kind of see this in our stat page. If we just go here, we can scroll on down, and we can see that my crit damage is 1,360 from items in Paragon, but it turns into 2,401.2 from the crit damage multipliers that I have in the build. Okay, nothing funky there. Everything's making sense. Now, with non-physical damage, things become a little bit more funky. Imagine we have 1,000% non-physical damage to our Lightning, Fire, and Cold, and then we have this non-physical damage multiplier that's saying 50%. Well, this is going to turn each of them into 1,500%. So that's their new base value, 1,500%. Now, when we look at Enlightened, it states that when you become Enlightened, your bonus damage with Fire, Lightning, and Cold are equal to them combined. And what that means is that it's going to take this 1,500% to each of them, and it's going to add them all together, and now each of them is equal to that additive value, which is 4,500%. Except the game states that, hey, this new 4,500% is your new base damage value, and it has not been modified by non-physical damage multipliers, which means it's going to reapply this 50% non-phys multiplier, and it now turns into 6,750% bonus damage to lightning. So with this double dipping mechanic with enlightenment, we have turned 1,000% damage to lightning into 6,750% bonus damage to lightning. That is wild, but that's not the only thing that's going on that's a little bit funky. The next thing that's wonky that's going on is Enchantment Master. Now, when we look into our Paragon point, our Enchantment Master states that we get 40% increased damage with the main element of the enchantment choice, and then 20% increased damage for the second enchantment if it's the same elements. So the first concept here is it 40 plus 20, 60%? Actually, no, it's multiplying across each other. It's actually 68%. Check tested, don't know why it's doing that. The second question I have for you as my audience is, if we put familiar in as the enchantment, what type of element is familiar? Is it cold? Is it fire? Ice? What is it? Yeah, it's all three. And for whatever reason, it doesn't matter what your second element is, because this one's all three, it's somehow now applying that 1.68 multiplier to all three of your elements. I don't know why it's doing that, but that's what's happening. And so now what happens is these are the damage values I have in my fire, my lightning, and my cold. We can go ahead and check that right here. I'll go ahead and take this off, and you can see that it's 1525, 1516, 1142, just like we have right here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, the elements turns online for lightning and fire. That goes on, and then we have the familiar, which is going to give us 10% to the cold and to the lightning. We can't cast a fire because we're not casting a fire conjuration. Then the enchantment master's coming in and multiplying all three of them by 1.68. Flame feeder's multiplying them all by 10%. Elementalist is multiplying them all by 10.4%. And these are the new base bonus physical damage multipliers. Then enlightenment turns online and says, hey, we're going to add all three of these together. This is our new base damage, 12,529. We put that over there, and the game goes, hey, this new base damage that you have, we need to redo all of those multipliers that we just talked about. And based on whether or not we have two familiars out being ice cold or just, sorry, ice and lightning or just lightning, it's going to be either a 1.21 or 1.1 multiplier. And this is going to be our damage values between 47,000 and 43,000. Well, let's see if I'm full of shit. Let's go ahead and look down at my cold lightning damage. Let's wait. There we go, 43,000 with lightning. Let's see if we can get it up to the 47,000. I believe this is going to happen on my second enlightenment. So enlightenment needs to turn off, and there it is. Enlightenment's turned off. We now need to go turn enlightenment back on, and we're at 47,000. Wild. Okay. So that's kind of what's happening with all of this mumbo jumbo and garbage that's happening. So long story short, just stack all non-physical damage multipliers that you can and any non-physical damage additive that you can, because everything's double dipping and it's giving you really big damage. So next we're going to talk about the Roaring Lightning Spear Snapshot, which is just going to increase all of our Lightning Spears damage by 160% because of how Roaring Lightning works. The way we're going to do this is we enter an instance, we cast our ball lightning 4 times so that we can get our 8 crackling lightnings right here. We walk up to the target, we press our flame shield, we don't cast any other spells, we wait for it to hit. Once it's hit, we go ahead and cast our lightning spear, and then we go into our rotation and we're good to go. That's it. We literally, every single lightning spear we cast now has the 160% damage multiplier to it. It's pretty well known little trick, but it's definitely going to give you probably about 4 to 5 pit tiers higher's worth of damage just simply from that one trick. So the last thing that we're going to talk about is the Fireball Execute, which if you utilize it properly can legitimately make you go through the dungeon nearly twice as fast. So I'm not kidding about that. It is literally incredibly insane, and I'm going to talk about why. The way that this build does damage is, as we were talking about with the Sem Zon rune, is that we are teleporting, and on every 4th teleport we are able to overpower for 0.35 seconds, and then afterwards we don't really do any damage after that until our overpowers come back up. So really we're kind of on this cycle where like every second and a half we're actually able to deal damage. So I'm going to flashbang you here with a little bit of paint. And what we're going to do is we're going to imagine that we have this target. And every single time you go through your overpower cycle, you're able to deal 76% of that boss's HP. But then the thing is that it's going to take you another 5 seconds. I know it's not 5, but just imagine with me. 5 seconds to then go into your next damage cycle where you will actually kill the target because you're dealing 76% with that overpower. But let's say that now instead, once you hit this 76%, you immediately go into casting your fireball. So you just, I don't know how to draw a fireball. I'm going to try. I don't know. I feel like I just like drew a sperm, but whatever. You fireball the target right at 76%, target dies. You now no longer have to wait for this 5 seconds. You just move on. And so by doing that, you have very much sped up your clear time. Now you are going to get to a point though where instead of dealing 76% of the boss's HP, now you're going to deal 70%. And there's nothing you can do until you wait for the 5 seconds to then do the next cycle of damage to kill it. And this is why this build, it looks like it's able to clear the dungeon at like pit 109 in 5 minutes, and then you go to pit 110, and because you're just under that 75% damage mark, now it takes 9 minutes to get to the boss. That's literally the reason why, is because of how we are utilizing Fireball as the execute mechanic to actually almost double the speed by which we actually reach the boss. So I hope that helps out a little bit. That brings us to the end of this video. I hope that this was able to help you in being able to deal damage. A lot of this is going to be playstyle oriented. I guess the last thing that I'm going to say to the big pit pushers out there is treat this build like Diablo 3, where you're essentially trying to group up 2 or 3 elite packs together and then sit on the targets and go through your cycles. You'll actually be relatively surprised. The ice sleets are actually going to be doing giga damage if you cycle them onto an overpower while you're stacking max life. You're going to deal like 50 to 100 trillion damage hits and just burst the elites down. Yes, the build is still going to suffer against bosses. That's just one of the weaknesses that it has, but it's still one of the best pit pushing builds there are. If you have any other questions, please leave them in the comments below, or please drop by my Twitch or my YouTube live when I go live if you feel you need to ask any questions, or join the community there. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Operator Otter,